Well, that was a chapter from a book that Kent's been working on, and let's hope he gets it completed and that we can all read it. But it was nice of him to share that with us. And then we're just going to talk a little bit about the history here and some of the people. And, you know, when we turn the camera off, Kent and I are just constantly talking about the old days and some of the characters here. So, you know, between Millie and the first mayor, you know, who, you know, Guy Pascal, who was, I think he had a conservative talk show program.
Yes, he had.
Like on the radio?
Yes, he did. I think WSPB down there in Sarasota. And but he was more than that. He was a lawyer.
Right. Was he an inventor or something?
Yes, he invented Airwick. Just messing around. And what brought him to our area was there was a certain type of pine tree that grew down here that he had to have to get, I don't know, the sap or whatever,
right,
and to put in his formula. And so he said he...
so this is Guy Pascal.
Yes, Guy Pascal, yeah. And he was one of the funniest and most remarkable guys.
Well, he had to be physically fit to to walk on his hands all weekend, and to and his wife was striking. She was an Oriental woman. And,
she was, I believe,
Melanie, wasn't it?
Melanie Pascal, yes. And you know, I wouldn't be a bit surprised.
Very pretty.
Oh yes, and she's, I think, still alive.
Yeah, I think she's in some sort of a you know,
home over in Sarasota. Yeah.
Retirement home.
I really ought to look her up because she was always so gracious, and they made a great team together. And he also did some experimenting, did some work in air conditioning.
Well, one of the stories that was, I thought, one of the most heartwarming stories that I remember about Guy Pascal was, you know, that he had come over here and there were so few people on the island that they must have had a coconut telegram. I don't know if they had like, you know, like telephones back in those days, but somehow they would communicate with each other that they had some fish, or that they usually at all who caught the last big batch of fish. So Mother, one of her stories that she told was that Guy Pascal had this house that he built in the middle of an island.
Yeah.
That was called, it's now Hideaway Bay.
Yeah, but he named
Wake Island.
He named it Wake Island.
Right.
And all of the mud flats out there, he called them Piscatory Islands.
Yeah. Well, they're full of scallops, are beautiful, good fishing. You know, it's a great area. And he had this house that had a basketball court in the middle of the house. Did you know that? Yeah,
and he also had a swing, and it was a two-story swing.
Yeah, and they had balconies on either end of this big house, open house. It was like a barn.
Yeah.
And they had, at one time, a grand piano on each balcony. So he had friends from New York that would come down that were pianists, and they would have these duets, you know, playing the grand pianos. And so, but this story is that Mother says that she was invited to dinner there, and that they went to dinner, and then after they had dinner, they had the spotlights on outside, and they would put the plates, you know, that they were through with dinner, they would put the plates outside, and then they would all have after dinner drinks, and through the big picture windows watch the raccoons clean the plates. And so I thought, well, boy, that was, you know, you had a dinner and a show. But just the simplicity of those days, I think that was the charm, was that everything was simple. And, you know, I'm sure that there was as much going on here as anywhere, you know, like Peyton Place. But, you know, you really just didn't hear that much about it. You know, people were more respectful of each other, and just everybody just kind of lived their life here and had a nice time, and it was a nice place to live.
Well, you know, and so many things started spontaneously. For example, the night that the clubhouse, or what became the Buccaneer Inn,
right?
General Harris,
right?
The thing. Well, they had the fire down there. And they didn't have a fire department, obviously, and so right then they decided that they would get a fire department, and then they went down and you know. And
well, were you telling me the story about how they had gambling at the Buccaneer Inn?
Oh yeah.
And then how the Manatee County Sheriff didn't know what to do because there wasn't a bridge, and they had to go through Sarasota and come up and sneak up and...
That's right. Earl Moore, who was a photographer with the Herald Tribune at the time, later on wound up at the Braden Herald in the engraving department, and he told me this story himself. He said that there had been rumors that... and I imagine started by General Harris, knowing his character. They had gambling up here,
right?
And they had the tables and all this kind of stuff, and of course it's illegal. And so somebody came in and told Mr. Lindsay, who owned the Herald Tribune at the time. And so he alerted the newsroom and everything. He said, let's go out there and get some pictures and so forth and get a story. So they went out, they went out there, and of course it's on the Manatee side of Longboat Key, which is the jurisdiction, the chief law enforcement officer is the sheriff of the Severals County.
Yeah, Manatee County.
So anyway, they went out there. And Earl would go up to the window, nobody from the outside, and it was all quiet, you know, and he got pictures of the gambling going on there. So they ran them in the paper the next day, and then of course all the papers started bombarding Sheriff Baden. Roy Baden was the sheriff. And what are you going to do about it? Well, he decided to have a raid that night, and he raided them and confiscated everything, and nobody knows what it ever became of everything. But it was quite a interesting time in those days. It was simpler, but they found things to do.
Well, let's just hope that we can get together again and continue the conversation. And we just thank you for your time, Kent. And thanks for all the work you've done all these years with the historical interviews and audios. And this is just an attempt to sort of to get some records of the past. And thanks for your help.
Yeah. Well, it's my pleasure.